On July 20, 2025, the world lost more than just a beloved actor. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, best known for his iconic role as Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show, tragically drowned while on vacation with his wife and daughter in Costa Rica. The news stunned millions. A man known for his talent, intellect, and introspective artistry was gone at only 54. While tributes poured in from fans, friends, and former co-stars, one statement stood apart. It came from Adam Sandler, a fellow actor, comedian, and friend who had shared the screen with Warner in the late 1980s when they were both young men on the cusp of fame. Sandler, appearing visibly shaken at the Happy Gilmore 2 premiere just hours after learning the news, not only honored his friend's memory but offered something deeper. Something raw. Something few were prepared for. In a moment of spontaneous grief, Adam Sandler shared a series of painful truths about Warner's struggles in Hollywood, the weight of fame as a young black actor, and the devastating reality Warner lived in behind the scenes. It wasn't gossip. It wasn't scandal. It was truth, spoken by someone who had seen firsthand the hidden world that Malcolm-Jamal Warner endured with grace, humor, and quiet resilience. This video chronicles Warner's extraordinary life, the hidden burdens he bore, and the truths that Adam Sandler finally voiced after decades of silence. It is a story not just of loss, but of legacy, friendship, injustice, and the painful clarity that sometimes only death brings. Malcolm-Jamal Warner was born on August 18, 1970, in Jersey City, New Jersey. Raised by his mother, Pamela Warner, a fiercely dedicated woman who served as his manager for much of his early life, Malcolm's path to stardom began at a young age. Pamela recognized his innate talent and sensitivity early on, enrolling him in acting classes and supporting his participation in school plays and community theater. By the age of 12, Malcolm had developed a maturity far beyond his years, a quality that would later define his character on screen. In 1984, Warner auditioned for what would become one of the most significant roles in American television history, Theo Huxtable, the only son of Dr. Cliff Huxtable on The Cosby Show. With his natural charm, intelligent eyes, and sharp comedic instincts, Warner stood out immediately. Bill Cosby himself is said to have been struck by Warner's quiet confidence and emotional depth, reportedly selecting him on the spot. When The Cosby Show premiered in September 1984, it was a cultural lightning rod. The series revolutionized the depiction of black families on television, offering an image of affluence, education, and dignity that had long been absent from mainstream media. As Theo, Warner became the relatable teen trying to find his way in a family full of achievers, a role that endeared him to millions. Audiences loved him. Critics praised him. But what few saw was the immense pressure placed on a teenager thrust into stardom. At just 14 years old, Warner had become a national figure. The weight of being a role model, especially as a young black man on television, would become a lifelong burden. One that Warner carried with quiet strength, even as it began to shape the trajectory of his personal and professional life. While The Cosby Show was largely centered on the Huxtable family, the show often featured recurring characters who brought added dimension and humor to the series. In the later seasons, one of those characters was Smitty, a friend of Theo's portrayed by a then-unknown comedian named Adam Sandler. Sandler was in his late teens at the time, already showing signs of the comedic genius that would later define his career. His time on The Cosby Show was brief but impactful, and it brought him into direct contact with Malcolm-Jamal Warner. The two quickly struck up a friendship. Despite their different backgrounds, Warner coming from a dramatic foundation, Sandler from stand-up and sketch comedy, the two found common ground in their youth, ambition, and the surreal nature of sudden fame. They were just teenagers navigating a world that often didn't make sense. When the cameras stopped rolling, the studio lights dimmed, and the crowds dispersed, they were simply Malcolm and Adam. Two boys talking about girls, basketball, and the future. They'd hang out between takes, share jokes in the green room, and occasionally shoot hoops after long days of filming. Warner, already a veteran of the show by then, often gave Sandler quiet advice on dealing with the pressure of performance. "I looked up to him," Sandler would later say. "He was younger than me by a little, but he had it all figured out. He carried himself with a kind of calm. Like he knew who he was, even when the rest of us didn't." Sandler's time on The Cosby Show may have been short-lived, but the bond he formed with Warner left a lasting impression. Decades later, it would be that early friendship that prompted Sandler to speak so honestly, so publicly, about the painful truths Warner never shared with the world. For viewers, Malcolm-Jamal Warner was the ideal teen. Smart, funny, charming, and just rebellious enough to be real. But off-screen, Warner was navigating a very different reality. Being a young black actor in 1980s Hollywood meant carrying the weight of representation. Warner wasn't just an actor, he was a symbol. Every move he made was under scrutiny, every mistake a potential headline, every emotion judged against the rigid expectations of a racially divided industry. In his later years, Warner would hint at these pressures in interviews. He spoke about the double burden of being expected to succeed not just as a performer, but as a representative of an entire race on primetime TV. Unlike many of his white peers, Warner had little room for error. The industry, and the public, expected perfection, maturity, and humility at all times. Behind closed doors, those expectations took their toll. Adam Sandler, in his 2025 tribute, opened up about moments when Warner confided in him about the loneliness of fame. "He told me one time he felt invisible even when millions were watching him," Sandler said. "That hit me hard. Because I saw it too. People loved Theo, but they didn't always see Malcolm." Warner was often typecast, even during his time on The Cosby Show. After the series ended, he struggled to find roles that matched his talent and maturity. Casting directors saw him as Theo, not as the complex man he was becoming. And while he remained graceful and professional, Sandler revealed that Warner wrestled with deep self-doubt behind the scenes. "He never let it show," Sandler added. "But I knew. I could tell. There were times he wanted to break down, but he didn't. Not because he wasn't hurting, but because he thought he didn't have the right to." That sense of emotional confinement, the belief that vulnerability was a luxury he couldn't afford, followed Warner for years. It shaped how he approached relationships, art, and his own mental health. And it was one of the many truths that Sandler believed needed to be shared, not to tarnish Warner's image, but to humanize him. When The Cosby Show ended in 1992, Malcolm-Jamal Warner was 22 years old. He had spent nearly a decade growing up in front of the camera, and now he was faced with the daunting task of redefining his career in an industry that had already decided who he was. For the next several years, Warner worked diligently to escape the shadow of Theo Huxtable. He took on varied roles, appeared in stage plays, and even stepped behind the camera to direct episodes of shows like Malcolm and Eddie, a sitcom he also co-starred in from 1996 to 2000. That show was a modest success, offering Warner an opportunity to showcase his comedic timing and production skills. But the public still largely saw him as Theo. Frustration mounted. Warner had more to offer: depth, range, vision, but Hollywood wasn't listening. Casting calls often ignored his intelligence and gravitas, offering instead stereotyped roles that failed to reflect his growth as an artist. Despite these setbacks, Warner refused to surrender his creative integrity. He turned toward music and poetry, using these outlets to explore themes of identity, race, fatherhood, and healing. During this time, Sandler had launched into Hollywood superstardom with films like Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, and The Wedding Singer. Though their careers took different paths, the respect between the two men endured. Sandler later revealed that he quietly supported Warner's creative projects and had even tried to get Warner a supporting role in one of his films, but studio executives reportedly declined. "I wanted to get him back on the screen," Sandler said. "But people couldn't see past Theo. And that broke my heart." Warner, ever resilient, didn't complain. He kept creating, kept pushing, kept believing that one day, the world would see him not just as a character, but as the complex, brilliant man he truly was. Malcolm-Jamal Warner's creative reach extended far beyond television. While most fans knew him as Theo Huxtable, close followers of his post-Cosby Show career came to appreciate his intense devotion to music, particularly jazz, and to spoken-word poetry. Warner believed that music allowed him to say things he couldn't express on screen. In music, he wasn't a character, he was himself. He formed a jazz fusion band and regularly performed across the country, often blending live instrumentation with thoughtful, provocative spoken word. His themes were introspective, tackling everything from fatherhood and identity to racism and mental illness. In 2015, Warner's passion for musical expression reached new heights when he was awarded a Grammy for his contribution to Robert Glasper's rendition of Stevie Wonder's Jesus Children. The win didn't just validate Warner's talent, it validated his voice. The track, deeply rooted in spirituality and social consciousness, featured Layla Hathaway and Warner delivering spoken-word interludes that reflected on police violence and black pain. Critics were moved by Warner's verses, which confronted the erasure of black voices in a system built to overlook them. The win was not just a trophy for Warner, it was a statement. Adam Sandler, who quietly followed Warner's music career from afar, later praised his friend's bravery in speaking truth through art. "He never chased hits," Sandler said. "He chased meaning. That takes guts. Especially in this business." In a 2017 podcast appearance, Warner described music as a sanctuary. It was where he could process his emotions, release pain, and reach others who felt the same but didn't know how to express it. For many of his listeners, Warner wasn't just a former sitcom star, he was a teacher of emotional literacy. Despite his fame, Warner remained one of the most intensely private figures in Hollywood. Unlike many celebrities who leaned into the spotlight, Warner consistently stepped back from it. He chose peace over paparazzi, authenticity over attention. Much of his personal life was kept guarded, and only in recent years did the world learn about his wife and daughter. Warner met his wife, whose identity he kept private to shield her from media intrusion, in the early 2010s. She was not from the entertainment industry, which Warner later described as a blessing. Their relationship was grounded in real connection, away from the distortions of Hollywood. They welcomed a daughter in 2017, and Warner frequently spoke of how fatherhood transformed him. He once said in an interview, "Being a dad gave me clarity. It reminded me of who I was before the fame." His home life became a sacred retreat, filled with music, laughter, books, and long conversations about life. It was also a space of healing. Warner had struggled silently with anxiety and depression for years, battles he would eventually share with Sandler during a quiet reunion in 2024. Sandler, who visited Warner's home just 8 months before his death, later recalled being struck by the serenity of the environment. "It was peaceful," Sandler said. "Like a little world Malcolm had built where he could finally breathe." During that visit, the two talked for hours. They reminisced about the Cosby Show, reflected on the roads they had taken, and spoke deeply about what Warner felt he still hadn't accomplished. That conversation would linger in Sandler's heart, especially after Warner's sudden passing. The Warner family's 2025 summer vacation to Costa Rica was meant to be a time of rest and reconnection. Malcolm had just wrapped up a series of music sessions for an upcoming spoken-word jazz album and wanted to spend uninterrupted time with his wife and daughter. They chose Puerto Viejo, a serene Caribbean coastal town known for its lush beaches and quiet waves. On July 20th, Malcolm went for a late morning swim with a close friend while his wife and daughter watched from the shore. According to eyewitnesses and Costa Rican authorities, a sudden riptide pulled Warner out farther than expected. His friend was able to swim back to shore, but Warner struggled. Bystanders and lifeguards quickly responded, pulling him from the water and administering CPR for nearly 20 minutes. Despite their efforts, Malcolm-Jamal Warner was pronounced dead at the scene. News of the tragedy broke just hours later, first reported by local media before being confirmed by his publicist. The autopsy conducted by Costa Rican officials determined the cause of death to be asphyxiation by submersion, drowning. The entertainment world stood still. Fans across the globe, many of whom had grown up watching Warner evolve on television and on stage, were left stunned and heartbroken. His family issued a brief statement, asking for privacy and vowing to preserve the legacy he had built so meticulously. Within hours of Warner's death being confirmed, tributes flooded in from all corners of the entertainment industry. Felicia Rashad, who had played Warner's TV mother Claire Huxtable, expressed her sorrow through a handwritten letter posted online. "He was more than my son on screen. He was my son in spirit. Gentle, thoughtful, fiercely intelligent. The world is darker without him." Keisha Knight Pulliam, who portrayed Rudy Huxtable, described Warner as the anchor of our TV family, and called him a guiding light for all of us who were lucky enough to grow up beside him. Poets, musicians, actors, and activists echoed those sentiments. Musician Robert Glasper called Warner a true brother and collaborator, while Ava DuVernay tweeted, "He was a quiet force. Articulate. Bold. Timeless." But it was Adam Sandler's tribute that went viral. At the red carpet premiere of Happy Gilmore 2, just one day after Warner's death, Sandler paused mid-interview, tears in his eyes. "I can't pretend this premiere matters right now," he said. "I lost a friend. We all lost someone who mattered." Sandler's full remarks, later posted online, opened a floodgate of emotion. His voice cracked as he recounted their early days on The Cosby Show, Warner's deep private struggles, and the silence that surrounded him for too long. "He was hurting," Sandler said. "Not every day. But some days. And I wish more people had asked him how he was doing." For years, Adam Sandler had stayed silent about many of the difficult conversations he shared with Warner. He didn't feel it was his place. But in the wake of Warner's death, that silence became too heavy. In a lengthy social media post titled "I Should Have Said Something," Sandler laid bare what he called the awful truth. That Warner had battled quietly with depression and disillusionment for decades, exacerbated by the racism, typecasting, and professional barriers that haunted his career. "He told me once," Sandler wrote, "sometimes I feel like I've been politely shut out of my own industry." That stuck with me. Because he was right. Sandler recalled how Warner had been turned down for projects not because of talent, but because of preconceived notions. "He wasn't flashy enough. He wasn't loud. He didn't fit the mold Hollywood wanted," Sandler said. One conversation, which took place just 3 months before Warner's death, was especially haunting. According to Sandler, Warner had called him late one night and said, "Man, I feel like I have more to say than anyone I know. And no one's listening." That call stayed with Sandler, and after Warner's passing, he could no longer keep it private. The awful truth is that Malcolm was an artist screaming into a void. And too many of us, myself included, didn't do enough to make sure he was heard. Hollywood has a long history of typecasting black actors, especially those who rise to fame as children or teens. Warner's case was no different. Though he played one of the most recognizable characters in American television, the industry rarely gave him the opportunity to grow beyond that image. In interviews, Warner often alluded to the frustration of being viewed only through the lens of Theo Huxtable. Scripts offered to him were often shallow, comedic, or reductive. He wanted to play complex men, doctors, revolutionaries, poets, villains, but the offers never came. Financially, Warner was stable, but not immune to stress. Contrary to assumptions, child stars, especially from older television eras, rarely walk away with fortunes. Syndication contracts and residual payments are rarely as generous as the public imagines. Warner had to keep working, often juggling side gigs in directing, music, and live performances to maintain consistency. After the Cosby scandals emerged in the mid-2010s, Warner's legacy became even more complicated. Though he had no involvement in Cosby's actions, and had publicly distanced himself, many casting agents associated Warner with the now tainted brand. Roles dried up even further. Opportunities slipped away. Sandler, seeing this from afar, called out the hypocrisy. They praised him for years, then abandoned him when things got hard. That's the business. That's the broken part. Though the industry often ignored him, Malcolm-Jamal Warner never stopped using his voice. Throughout the 2010s and 2020s, he became increasingly involved in advocacy, particularly for mental health awareness and social justice within the black community. He marched in Black Lives Matter protests. He gave free performances in underserved schools. He launched a podcast titled Not All Hood, where he discussed the nuances of black identity, art, politics, and emotional healing. The podcast became a cult success, reaching thousands of young listeners who found in Warner a mentor figure. His voice, deep and deliberate, was described as the sound of calm wisdom in a world of noise. Warner also performed regularly at poetry slams and jazz clubs, using spoken word to explore his own trauma and encourage others to do the same. Sandler, though rarely seen at these events, financially supported Warner's community initiatives and quietly promoted the podcast on his production company's platforms. He was doing the work, Sandler said. Real work. Not for headlines. For healing. At the time of his death, Warner was on the verge of one of his most ambitious creative projects, a deeply personal poetry jazz album titled The Quiet Room. He had recorded 7 of the 12 planned tracks and was finalizing arrangements with Grammy-winning producer Terrace Martin. In addition, Warner had begun writing his memoirs, tentatively titled Beyond Theo, which promised to explore everything from childhood fame to adulthood solitude. Early excerpts revealed a reflective, unflinchingly honest tone. He had also written several scripts for a television drama loosely inspired by his life, chronicling a former teen star's attempt to find meaning in middle age. He hoped to direct and star in the pilot. All of these dreams were cut short on July 20, 2025. Sandler, who had read one of Warner's unfinished scripts, confirmed that Warner was finally ready to show the world who he really was. "He told me," Sandler recalled, "this is the one, Adam. This is the story I've been waiting my whole life to tell." Now that story remains unfinished, but not forgotten. The shadow cast by Bill Cosby's legal scandals in the 2010s impacted Malcolm-Jamal Warner in deeply personal ways. As the man who once played Theo Huxtable, the beloved son of Cosby's character, Warner found himself tethered to a legacy that had turned controversial. Though he made careful public statements denouncing Cosby's actions, Warner remained visibly conflicted. He never went for tabloid drama. Instead, he stayed quiet, reflecting in poetry and music. According to Adam Sandler, Warner often struggled behind closed doors, questioning whether his legacy would be remembered for his acting or be forever tainted by Cosby's crimes. Sandler shared how Warner once told him, "I built a life from a role I now have to explain." Warner worked to distance his career from The Cosby Show, embracing roles that defined him beyond Theo, but the burden never fully lifted. After Warner's death, something remarkable happened. His fans began reclaiming his legacy. Petitions to fund a documentary on his life and cultural influence went viral. His spoken word albums and jazz fusion recordings climbed digital charts. His poetry, often centered on black identity and masculinity, was quoted across social media. Adam Sandler took action by founding a grant in Warner's name, aimed at supporting underrepresented black artists and writers. At a memorial event, Warner's daughter, who had stayed out of the spotlight, finally spoke. "My dad taught me that pain doesn't have to be hidden, it can be turned into art. He was always more than Theo." Few people knew how close Adam Sandler and Malcolm-Jamal Warner had become in recent years. Though they began in different entertainment lanes, their bond deepened through mutual respect and years of emotional support. Sandler shared excerpts from their private texts and letters, filled with philosophical musings, jokes, and encouragement. They took a road trip in 2022, traveling from LA to New Mexico in a rented RV, something they had joked about doing since the 90s. Their final phone call happened just weeks before Warner's death. Sandler broke down describing it. He said, "Don't forget to tell the truth if I'm not around. I thought he was just being poetic. I should have said more." Sandler's public revelation of Warner's personal struggles jolted the entertainment world. Studios, agents, and even unions began talking openly about the lack of mental health resources for actors, especially black men navigating fame under dual pressures of race and celebrity. Actors like Donald Glover, Anthony Mackie, and Tyler James Williams echoed Sandler's concerns. Warner's name became synonymous with unspoken pain in the industry. Sandler demanded reforms, not as a gesture, but as a necessity. "We failed Malcolm," he said. "Let's not fail the next one." The public's reaction was immediate and emotional. Hashtags like #RememberMalcolm and #JusticeForTheo trended globally. Thousands of fans shared how Warner's portrayal of Theo Huxtable helped them through their own childhoods. Candlelight vigils were held in Harlem, Los Angeles, and even Johannesburg. Warner became more than an actor. He became a symbol of lost innocence, resilience, and the need for emotional honesty. A new generation of black creatives cited him as a major influence, not for his fame, but for his humility and introspection. At Warner's private memorial in Los Angeles, Adam Sandler gave the final eulogy. Fighting back tears, he finally shared the awful truth. Malcolm carried more pain than anyone should. Not because he was weak, but because no one ever asked how strong he had to be. His words resonated far beyond the room. Sandler's call was clear. This wasn't just about mourning one man, but about changing an entire system. Honoring Warner meant more than flowers and speeches. It meant telling the whole story, ugly, beautiful, and real. Like this video, it helps us reach more viewers who care about real stories behind Hollywood's smiling faces. Subscribe to the channel, don't miss our next video on your favorite stars. Comment below, share your memories of Malcolm-Jamal Warner or your thoughts on Adam Sandler's words. Thank you for watching. Rest in peace, Malcolm-Jamal Warner. Your voice, your legacy, and your truth will never be forgotten.